Okay, so this week on subjects nobody wants to get preached to about is anger. We're talking about anger today. So this series is called Soul Sludge, but it's part of our grander Red Letter Road series, which we're doing all year. And this month we're talking about intense kind of inward issues that sludge up our lives. Things like worry, anger, pride, things like that. And I have the joy of preaching about anger this week. I'm sure you're all thrilled and excited to hear about it. Okay, well, let's start here. Well, actually, let's start with the verses. We might as well do that, right? We're going to open these up. I'm going to read. You're going to follow. It gets confusing when everybody tries to read. Matthew 5:21-26. You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, "You shall not murder. And anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, 'Raka,' is answerable to the court, and anyone who says, 'You fool,' will be in danger of the fire of hell. Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to them, then come and offer your gift. Settle matters quickly with your adversary who is taking you to court. Do it while you are still together on the way, or your adversary may hand you over to the judge, and the judge may hand you over to the officer, and you may be thrown into prison. Truly, I tell you, you will not get out until you have paid the last penny." So yeah, fun stuff. Well, let's start by saying this. Anger is a serious topic. It's serious. It's real, it's intense, we all get angry, we've all experienced anger, we've all experienced the problems of anger. Anger has turned brothers against brothers and families against families. It's turned religions against each other. It's divided countries. It started world wars. Anger is an intense subject because it does really, really intense things. It hurts people all over the world. And what I would really say about anger is that it makes people do things they would never do otherwise. I used to tell my friends, never ever make decisions when you're angry in high school because that could get you in all types of trouble. Saw a buddy this week in the Valley where I grew up in high school, and I remember one night we were coming out of a hockey game and we all met some other people in the parking lot, and I remember him getting in a little bit of a, tilly, and I remember he went back that night to go find some people with very poor intentions. He did something he never would have done otherwise because he was angry. He wasn't in the right mind. Well, I was thinking about different funny stories to tell you because I like funny stories. And there was one particular story when I was a young boy of my dad coming home a little bit tired, maybe a little bit frustrated from his day of work. We'll say angry. And my dad was never an angry man, ever. He was always kind, gentle, patient, humble. And one particular supper, he came home and was a little bit grumpy. And he didn't want to talk. He just, whatever happened at work that day, of course, we never would have known. We're having spaghetti for supper. And he asked for the pepper, which was strange for him because he never ate pepper on anything. He was a meat and potatoes kind of guy. And gave him the pepper shaker, and it was one of those ones full of pepper balls. And he turned it the wrong way or opened it, and the pepper balls that were full in the shaker went all over his spaghetti. So his whole spaghetti mound was mounded in pepper balls. So my mom just she kind of recognized what was going on. She said, "Do you want me to get you some more spaghetti?" And he said, No, I'm eating this spaghetti. So he's twirling off his spaghetti and popping it in, and we're all sitting at the table just kind of watching what's going on. It's like crunch, 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 eating full balls of pepper. Anyway, so it makes you do things you'd never do otherwise. Yeah. Well, on that note, I should talk about the Red Sox who just won. And I decided to share a Red Sox story. So in the spring of 1894, the Baltimore Orioles came to Boston to play a routine baseball game. But what happened that day was anything but routine. The Orioles' John McGraw got into a fight with the Boston third baseman. Within minutes, all the players from both teams had joined in the brawl. The warfare quickly spread to the grandstands. Among the fans, the conflict went from bad to worse. Someone set fire to the stands and the entire ballpark burned to the ground. Not only that, but the fire spread to 107 other Boston buildings as well. What's not written there is how many people died and how much damage was done. But it all started with one person getting angry. So let's go to point number one, which would be that anger is natural. Anger's natural. As much as I can sit here and say that it's intense, it's bad, it causes fights, it causes people to get angry with each other, hurt people, yada yada, anger's natural. It's unavoidable. If you're going to sit there and tell me you're not angry today or you've never been angry, I'm going to not believe you. It's not true, because we all get angry. We've all been angry. It's unavoidable. You're going to get angry again in your life. You might get angry today. You might get angry tonight. You might get angry tomorrow. I'd be willing to bet that you'd get angry this week. Anger is unavoidable. It's natural. It happens. It's going to happen. So we need to address it because it's going to happen. It's unavoidable. Well, it happens for a few reasons too. It happens for noble reasons and it happens for ignoble reasons. It happens for good reasons and not good reasons, but it does happen. So let's talk about some of the things that you might get angry about. You might get angry because you feel that justice has not been served. You might get angry because you feel like you've been wronged. You might get angry because you feel like you've had a blocked goal in your life, something you wanted to achieve and you didn't get there. You might get angry because you want to see good things happen and they're not happening. These are all they're really justifiable reasons to get angry. Have you ever been angry because something you wanted to happen didn't happen? You ever get angry because you saw somebody out there doing something you didn't like, you didn't think it was right, and it made you angry? Those things happen, right? In fact, we might even say those are good reasons to be angry. You get frustrated when you see things not happening the way they're supposed to. And is that a good thing? Well, maybe. See, because anger in itself can sometimes be a catalyst for action. It can help you do good things. Sometimes. If you see anger out there because there's sex trafficking, you see anger out there, you get angry because you see a people group being marginalized, you see poor people, and you're angry about it, it might cause you to do good things. It might be a good catalyst for action, right? You ever been angry and it caused you to do good? I think for me, I have. I think I have. So I thought to myself, actually, when I was doing this, I sat down kind of philosophically and I thought to myself, would I go the rest of my life without being angry? If I could go the rest of my life without ever getting angry again, would I do it? And do you know what I said? So no, I think I'd like to be angry again in my life. Not because, not with bad anger, but with good anger, because anger can be justified at times, and it can cause you to do good things. If I never got angry, I'd never have passion. If I didn't get angry at the way that I looked out at my community and saw people not doing good, sitting in injustice, doing bad things, it probably wouldn't cause me to do good things. But now here's the problem. It can cause you to do good things. It can be justified. Anger can be right. Anger in itself is not wrong. But here's the problem. We all think our personal anger is justified, right? So this is when everybody is going, yeah, you're right. My anger's good. My anger's perfect. Their anger's wrong. I have a right to be angry, but they don't. That's the problem with anger. Because we all think ours is personal and ours is justified and ours is right, but it might very well not be. So, even though anger can be good sometimes, even though anger can cause us to do good things, even though anger can be put into the right places, and even from justifiable things like us being stopped going in a direction we want to go or for the sake of justice, anger is very dangerous, and that's point number 2. Anger is very dangerous. Well, I want to talk for a bit about one of my favorite things that I've ever learned theologically, and that's that God has a nature. You ever considered God's nature? Anyone? So if I said God has a nature, what would you say would be parts of God's nature? What makes up God? He's loving, sure. Since we're calling out answers now, let's go for it. What are some other parts of God's nature? He's forgiving. He's naturally forgiving. What else is God naturally? He's gracious. He's full of grace. God is naturally powerful. God is naturally wise. God is naturally patient, kind, gentle. God is naturally creative. So all of these things. So God cannot, just think with me, this is the hardest part of this message for us to get today, so we're going to try really hard to get it. So God cannot help but be loving. In all of God's actions for all of history, God has been loving in each and every one of them because it is his nature. He is naturally loving, so he cannot help but be loving. Okay? In all of God's actions for all of time, he has been patient. He's been kind. He's been creative. God has always been these things because it's his very nature. He cannot not be loving. So, does God get angry? Yes. A lot of the time. All through the Bible, there's examples of God being angry. But the thing about God's nature is that in God's anger, he is also naturally sinless. He's naturally holy. He's naturally loving. So in God's anger, he cannot sin. He cannot be anything but loving. Now here's the problem with that. What's our nature? Well, some of the same things. Let's use my friend Kevin, for example. Kevin is what? Kevin is naturally passionate, I would say. Kevin is naturally funny. He's naturally creative and he's entrepreneurial, those types of things. And maybe I'd even say that Kevin is naturally a little bit angry sometimes. Maybe that works in with the passion, right? But the problem is Kevin is also naturally sinful, as am I, and as am all of us. So the problem with this is that when God encounters things that make him angry, he cannot sin. He cannot do wrong. But when Kevin or me or any of us, when we encounter things that make us angry, we do sin. Because it's not anger that's the problem, it's what it's matched with. See, anger in itself it's not sinful. Like we just said, it's inevitable, it's going to happen, it's not wrong, God does it. It can cause us to spur us on in the right direction. But the issue is we're not God, right? So when we hit anger, we don't necessarily do all the right things like God would do. We sometimes do the wrong things, all the wrong things. So let's think about some biblical examples of people doing, when they hit their anger, what do they do? Well, what's probably the most famous example of somebody who's real grumpy in the Bible? Maybe Cain, the first example of somebody being real grumpy. Cain does what? He kills his brother. In the first example we have of murder in the Bible, Cain gets so angry with his brother for preparing a better sacrifice than him that he strikes his brother down. He kills him in a field. Now, we never hear later in the story if Cain is remorseful, if he's repentant, if on his long journeys by himself into this world where he's cast out, if Cain sits down and goes, I wish I hadn't done that. I'm sorry for my brother. I wish I could have him back. I wish I could take that action back. We never hear about that for Cain. But we know that in his anger, he did something really, really stupid. When he approached anger, he did not hit it with love or kindness or forgiveness like God would. He hit it with the exact opposite. He hit it with sin. Now, we can all sit here today and say, okay, well, Cain's one example. He's a bad cat. We're not talking about Cain as a hero of the Bible. Nobody thinks Cain's a hero. But who is a hero of the Bible? Let's name a couple examples of some other people that get angry. What about Moses? Moses is one of the best examples we have of a faithful servant. And what happens with Moses? He's out one day, and what does he see? He sees an Israelite slave being beaten. Should that Israelite slave be beaten? No, that's wrong. And Moses is angry about it. Rightfully so. I'd be angry if I saw a slave being beaten. One of my own people. Undeserving of that. And so what does Moses do? In his anger, how does he react? Poorly. He kills the man. He kills the Egyptian and he buries him in the sand. Moses is a good guy. But in his anger, he makes a very bad mistake. One more example. Peter. We all like Peter. He's funny. He's a good guy. We like Peter. He's the rock. Peter's the rock in which the church is built. He's a disciple. He's a little bit clueless sometimes, but he's a good guy. We like Peter. Peter goes into the world, tells people about Jesus. We like that. Walks on water, that's cool. Well, what happens in the Garden of Gethsemane? Peter's there, Jesus is there, and what happens? Judas shows up. The Romans show up. They show up to take Jesus away. A sinless man who never did anything wrong, betrayed by one of his own followers, who knew he'd never done anything wrong. Can you imagine the scene? I could tell you, I probably wouldn't handle it that well if I saw one of my buddies getting taken away. And not to mention one of my buddies, but the Son of God, who I've chosen to devote my whole life to. Throwing down your fishing nets and saying, this is the guy. I'm going to follow him the rest of my life. He's real. He's the Son of God. And what happens? But Judas shows up. He betrays Jesus, and they're going to take him away and kill him. Peter is justifiably angry. He should be angry. That's not fair. That's not fair to Jesus. That is the most unfair thing that's ever happened. And you know what Peter does? What's he do? He takes his sword out and he goes to cut one of the men trying to take Jesus away. And he cuts his ear off, right? But let me just say, he didn't like casually like a Three Musketeer, just kind of like, I'm just taking that ear right off. Like, that's not how that worked, okay? Peter was striking to kill. You can't take a man's ear casually off. His knife, his sword is coming down in a killing direction. His goal was murder. He was trying to kill the person to take Jesus away. Peter, we like Peter. In his anger, he chose poorly. See, because he's not God. And Moses isn't God, and Cain isn't God, and we're not God. So when we sit here and we think, I've got good reasons to be angry. Well, the problem is we don't always meet those with the right things. Just like some of these biblical heroes. So, what do we do? What do we do about all this? Well, let's go to point number 3, which is anger without sin. Anger without sin. So, it's here that we have a little bit of a conundrum, a little problem. In point number 1, what did we say? We said, you're going to get angry. In fact, some of you are probably sitting here grumpy about something or other. You're angry about something. I don't know what you're angry about. Maybe you're justified. Maybe you're not justified. Maybe it's the right thing to do. Maybe it's not to be angry. But we're going to get angry eventually. And what was point number 2? It's dangerous. It can lead you to do bad things. It can lead you to do things you'd never do before. So how do we face something that's going to happen no matter what? And how do we face it without sinning, without doing wrong? How do we face it like God would, with love or patience or grace? Well, luckily for us, you don't have to listen to me talk about it. You can go right to the Bible, because there's a really good verse about this. In fact, it always surprises me how great the Bible is. Ephesians 4:26-27 says, get this. This is an awesome verse. In your anger, do not sin. They're not saying if you ever get angry, when you get angry. Paul is aware that you're going to get angry in your life. And what does he say? In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry. And do not give the devil a foothold. So Paul has got it all figured out. He says, when you get angry, don't sin. Number 1. Don't let the sun go down while you're angry, and don't give the devil a foothold. Because Paul's well aware of what happens when you get angry. You've given the devil something to chew on. You've given something to fester, something to grow. So the first thing that Paul's really saying, and these are our points, I guess, is don't hide it or minimize it. When you do get angry, here's how you deal with it. You don't hide it. You don't tell me you're not angry, because I know you're angry. It's pretty clear. You don't tell yourself that you're angry or you're not angry. You don't try to, no, I'm a nice person. I don't get angry, so I'm not going to be angry right now. That's not how it works. Don't lie to yourself. Admit that you're angry. And then what's the next thing? Don't minimize it. Don't pretend that it's not a big deal. And then what's the next thing? Winning over anger. The best way how is to deal with it now. Who came up with that? I did. It was me. After much influence from David Morehouse over the last year and his quips. Yeah, that's how you deal with anger, is you deal with it now. Do not let the sun go down while you're angry. What is the most common wedding advice ever given? Don't go to bed angry. Don't go to bed angry. Now, there's a lot of truth to that. There's a lot of truth to that. Don't go to bed angry. See, do you know how anger becomes sin? You sit on it. If you showed me a video today of Syria, and you showed me the bombs going off, you showed me kids with nothing to wear, show me sick people fighting, do you know what would happen? I'd be angry. I'd be angry. Initially, I'd be angry. But then do you know what would happen? Is I could sit on it for a long time, and do you know what my anger would turn into? It might be hate for the people groups that have done that. Long festered sin that's no longer justified anger. It's now just a long, drawn-out sin process. Anger becomes sin when you sit on it and you let it stew, and it's not even about that anymore. I've seen people get angry at other people and be angry at them forever over a little thing. Because over time, the little thing grows and grows and grows and grows. You might be grumpy that I didn't show up wearing a tie today to preach. That's disrespectful. And maybe next week, you're going to go, he didn't talk to me this morning. I didn't like that. Well, maybe week number 3, what happens? You're already grumpy with me. You're not going in saying, I want to forgive Micah today and see him do better and be on his team. You've walked in frustrated. What about a year from now? You're really frustrated. You just downright don't like me. Is that justified anger anymore? No, it's just sin at that point because you've let it grow and you haven't dealt with it. You haven't faced it head on. So what's a few little tangible advices from somebody much younger than you about how to deal with this? Well, I haven't been dating or married or yada yada. I haven't been with Emily for that long. 5 years I think is the number. So longer than some, definitely not as long as many. But I could tell you a few things. So when we first started dating, we had real bad fights. We used to, after we were done our honeymoon phase, right? Because, you draw hearts on each other's hands and talk about how much you love each other and how pretty she is. And then you get out of your honeymoon phase and it's like all bets are off. You throw the gloves on the ground and you're ready to go. Well, we used to fight dirty. She'd say things just to make me angry. She'd say things just to hurt my feelings. And I do the same thing, right? We'd be angry at each other. What would we do? We'd go right at each other. Well, now we know each other pretty well. So if she ever did that to me, I'd go, you're just trying to hurt my feelings, But that's when we started. And I can tell you that if we had little fights and I sat on them and I let them stew, a little fight could turn into days worth of frustration. And that was never the way to deal with it. Now that was one way it worked. But you know what another way it worked was? Is sometimes we'd fight and I'd go away for a little break, and you know what I'd realize? That I was probably being an idiot. That I probably shouldn't have said the things I said. That I wasn't really that frustrated at all. One of the best things my dad's ever said to me, some of his most tangible advice that he's ever given me, is the issue's not the issue. When you're frustrated, you're probably not even frustrated about the thing you think you're frustrated about. If you're angry at me today because I didn't wear a tie, is the issue that I didn't wear a tie? Or is the issue something deeper than that? It's probably something deeper than that. The issue's not the issue. When someone's angry at you, it's probably not because of the little thing you did. It's probably something much deeper seated. And the same thing with you. When you get angry, is the issue the issue? So deal with the problem at hand. So, if Emily and I were frustrated with each other, we're fighting, do you know what I'd do? I'd go take a little break. I read up about quite a few studies on this. Some studies say 7 minutes, and you've completely rethought the whole fight. You've completely rethought the whole anger process. If you walk away for 7 minutes You're no longer going to be hot. You're no longer going to be frustrated. You're going to think more rationally about it. Something said 10 seconds. Something said 60 seconds. Something said an hour. Regardless, the truth of the matter is go take a little break. Go for a walk, then deal with it. But don't let it go on all day long. Deal with it right away. Right? So what are some other good advices we could give about anger? Well, the issue's not the issue. It's probably not going to happen all day long. And you need to deal with it that night. You need to deal with it before the sun goes down, because it can fester and it can stew. Well, now I'm done. And let's just do a little recap before I leave. Is anger something we all face? Yes. Is it going to happen again in your life? Is it going to happen this week? Probably, yeah. When it happens, how do we usually deal with it? Well, sometimes good, and there's sometimes reasons to be angry. But a lot of the time we don't handle it well. It can get really dangerous. God handles it well, but we're not always like God. That's why we want to strive to be like God, is because he deals with these things well. And when we find ourselves becoming angry, instead of letting it fester and stew and become sin, the right thing to do is maybe take a little break, go deal with it right away, deal with it head on, and to not carry it into the next day. Tomorrow has enough troubles of its own. Let's pray. Dear God, thank you for thank you for passion, first of all, God. We thank you that there are things in this life that drive us to good works, but God, we know that we are not like you. We have struggles that you don't have because of our sinful nature. We can get angry sometimes for good reasons, but we don't always handle it well. So God, we want to be like you. We want to handle our anger well. We know it's going to happen. We know it needs to get dealt with the right way. And we know that you know how to deal with things the right way, so we follow your example in love and in patience and in grace. God, if we're frustrated with people today, Lord, show us how to deal with that. Maybe we've been frustrated with people and angry at people for years, months, weeks, days. It doesn't matter, God. You want us to deal with those things. God, you also want us to deal with them quickly. As your verses said here, it's something to deal with immediately. It's not something to deal with for weeks. It's something to deal with right away. You can help us be wise and you can help us be patient. But we know that we have a job to do. You have given us free will and you've given us the ability to do things ourselves. And we want to do good things in that will. So God, as we go forward into our week, we do so hoping for your wisdom, hoping for your knowledge of the right things to do at the right times. When we get angry, whether it be a bad driver, whether it be a coworker or a family member, no matter what, God, help us show your love in that frustration. Lord, if we see bad things happening all over the world, give us the ability to have justified anger and put it into the right causes. Let us respond to our anger in love and not in frustration. God, work through us. Be with us. And thank you for how you set an example for us. In your name we pray, amen.